Rain poured relentlessly, the icy droplets stabbing my skin like needles. I, Owen Moore, 34 years old, freshly unemployed, stood motionless in front of the polished wooden door of my parents' house in Ohio. The worn backpack on my shoulder weighed heavily with a few wrinkled changes of clothes, and the meager belongings I had left after weeks of drifting. My hand tightly clasped the small, cold hand of Mason, the 9-year-old boy I had adopted 2 years earlier. He was thin and soaked to the bone, trembling as he pressed himself against me like a lost baby bird. Mason's frightened eyes darted around the unfamiliar house, a 2-story home with a white picket fence and neatly trimmed flower beds, the perfect picture of the success I once dreamed of. Now it only made me feel smaller and more estranged than ever. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Everything's going to be okay, Mason," I whispered, my voice shaking from cold and fear. The boy said nothing, only squeezed my hand harder, his tiny fingers ice cold. We had walked 3 hours through the downpour to get here after the last bus dropped us miles away. There was no other choice. I had lost my job, my wife, all my money, and our home. My parents were the last hope, even though I knew returning here would crush what little pride I had left. But for Mason, I had to try. I raised my hand and knocked. The sound echoed, swallowed by the drumming rain on the porch roof. My heart pounded as if awaiting a verdict. After a few agonizing seconds, the door cracked open. My father, Judah Moore, stood there, a tall, imposing man with silver hair, still impeccably dressed in a suit despite the late hour. A successful businessman who owned a small but solid construction company, he had always prided himself on his resilience. His eyes first registered shock when he saw me, disheveled, soaked, hair plastered to my forehead. Then his gaze shifted to Mason beside me. Surprise turned to irritation, then suspicion, as if the boy were some foreign object that didn't belong. "Owen? Good God, what are you doing here like this?" Dad said, his deep voice thick with disbelief. He didn't open the door wider. He stood blocking the threshold like a wall. Mom appeared behind him, wrapped in a shawl, her face creased from the cold and astonishment. Maria Moore, the strong woman who always maintained the perfect family image for neighbors and relatives, looked me up and down, then fixed her stare on Mason. "Owen, why do you look like this? And who is this child?" I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Dad, Mom, I'm sorry for showing up so late. Can we come in? The rain is heavy and Mason is freezing." Dad hesitated for a second, then reluctantly stepped aside. "Come in, but wipe your feet. Don't track mud on the floor." We stepped inside, water dripping from our clothes onto the gleaming hardwood. The living room was warm, the fireplace crackling, the faint scent of coffee in the air, a cruel contrast to the storm outside. Mason pressed even closer to me, his wide eyes taking in the spacious room filled with elegant furniture he had never seen before. I set the backpack down and drew a deep breath, gathering the last scraps of my dignity. "Dad, Mom, I'm in a really bad place right now. I was laid off a few months ago. The job market is terrible. I've applied everywhere, but no one is hiring. I tried every odd job I could find, but it still wasn't enough to survive." My voice broke. It took a moment to continue. "Then Amy. She betrayed me. She cheated, and when I found out, she took all our savings and everything we owned. All I had left was a rented room, but now the landlord kicked me out because I couldn't pay. I truly have nowhere else to go." The words poured out like a flood, my voice trembling. I looked at them, hoping for a trace of compassion. But Dad just stood there, arms crossed, face flushed with anger. "So you came crawling back here to live off us? Owen, you're 34 years old, not a kid anymore. I taught you to stand on your own 2 feet. Unemployed, divorced, broke. That's because you're weak. You're useless, no career, can't even keep a family together." His words cut into me like knives. I lowered my head, trying to defend myself. "Dad, I'm not here to freeload. I just need a place to stay temporarily while I look for work. I promise I'll leave as soon as I can support myself again. And Mason, he's my adopted son. I took him in 2 years ago when he was homeless. He has no one else, Dad." Dad spun around, pointing at Mason. "Adopted? Are you insane? You can't even take care of yourself and you bring another mouth to feed? I don't know where this kid came from, but I don't want him here. Your failure is a stain on this family. What will the relatives and neighbors think? Judah Moore's son coming home to beg? My heart clenched. Mason stood behind me, clutching my sleeve, his small body shaking, not just from the cold, but from fear. His bewildered eyes stared at my father, trying to understand why the grown-up was shouting. Mom, the one person I had hoped would defend me, said nothing in my favor. Instead, she stepped forward, voice shrill with sarcasm. Owen, you're young and healthy. Why come back to burden two old people? You're a useless parasite. We gave you an education, opportunities, and now you drag home some child of unknown origin? I will not allow him to set foot in this house. Leave and take care of yourself. Those harsh words left me speechless. I stood frozen, mouth open, tears welling up and mixing with the rainwater still on my face. Mason gripped my hand tighter. His quiet sobs echoed in the silent living room. Owen, let's go, he whispered, voice trembling. Dad gave us no further chance. He strode over and shoved me toward the door. Get out of my house. Don't ever come back. Mom just watched, not uttering a word to stop him. I bowed my head, took Mason's hand, and turned away. The backpack suddenly felt unbearably heavy, as if it carried the entire weight of our fate. The door slammed shut behind us, the lock clicking with finality. My last spark of hope died with that sound. We stepped back into the rain, the downpour still merciless, chilling us to the bone. Mason huddled against me, crying softly. Owen, I'm so cold. Why wouldn't they let us stay? I pulled him close, trying to shield him from the rain. The house is too small, buddy. We'll find somewhere else. But inside, everything was collapsing. That rainy night, I lost it all. Job, wife, home, and now even my own flesh and blood. Yet in that moment, I had to stay strong. Because a small life was holding my hand, trusting me as his only anchor in the world. We wandered along the dark, rain-soaked road, the dim streetlights reflecting off the puddles in flickering streaks that looked like illusions. Every step felt heavy, as if I were dragging a boulder behind me. Mason pressed close to my side, his breathing faint and labored, yet he didn't complain. He only gripped my hand tighter, as though letting go would mean losing me forever. In my mind, memories surged like a flood, pulling me back 2 years, to a time when my life was still relatively calm, before everything shattered into pieces. Back then, I was a skilled industrial electrician. I worked at a small factory on the outskirts of town, repairing electrical systems and maintaining machinery. Not glamorous, but steady enough to cover rent and monthly expenses. I lived in a modest 2-bedroom rental with my wife, Amy, a lively, attractive insurance saleswoman. We had been married 3 years. Life wasn't wealthy, but it was peaceful. In the mornings, I'd make coffee. Amy would kiss me goodbye before heading to work. Evenings, we'd eat dinner together, watch movies, or talk about vague future plans. Buying our own house, taking a vacation. I thought that was happiness, even though Amy sometimes grumbled that my income wasn't enough for us to live more comfortably. Still, I loved her, and I believed things would get better. One night about 2 years ago, everything changed. I came home late after an overtime shift, exhausted, reeking of machine oil. It was raining lightly, much like tonight, but not nearly as cold. As I opened the gate, I nearly tripped over something soft lying right in front of the door. I bent down, heart racing. It was a boy, thin and unconscious, his ragged clothes soaked through. His face was pale, lips purple from cold and hunger. Panicking, I checked for a pulse. Thank God he was still alive. Hey kid, wake up. I shook him gently, but he didn't respond. Without thinking, I scooped him up, carried him inside, laid him on the couch, wrapped him in a warm blanket, and called out to Amy from the bedroom. Amy, come quick. There's a boy collapsed at our door. My voice shook with worry. Amy rushed out, eyes wide. My God, Owen. Who is he? Why is he here? Together we tended to him. I wiped him down, dressed him in my dry and oversized clothes, while Amy warmed some milk. It took half an hour for the boy to stir, his eyes fluttering open in terror as he looked around. Where am I? His voice was faint and trembling. I smiled reassuringly. "You're safe at my house, buddy. What's your name? How did you end up at our door?" He hesitated, then whispered, "I'm Mason." I was so hungry I passed out. We fed him chicken soup and milk. Mason told us in bits and pieces he had been wandering for days, homeless, surviving on whatever he could beg. My heart broke for a 7-year-old who had already suffered so much. Amy was more anxious. "Owen, shouldn't we call the police? He might be a runaway." It was late, so I decided to let him rest first. The next morning he was stronger but still silent about his family. We kept him a few days. I bought him new clothes, fed him properly. Gradually he opened up, even laughed when I told silly jokes. A few days later, when he seemed fully recovered, Mason left a scribbled note on the table. "I have to go." I read it with a sinking heart and ran outside searching, but he was gone. Amy sighed in relief. "Just let him go. We're not responsible for him anyway." But I couldn't rest easy. I worried about a child alone on dangerous streets. Then a week later, he came back, standing at the door, thinner, hungry, clothes filthy. "Owen, please help me." He burst into tears and threw his arms around me. My heart melted. I hugged him, brought him inside, and decided he would never leave again. I sat him down on the couch and gently asked, "Why are you living on the streets, Mason? Where are your parents? Do you remember your address?" He lowered his head, voice shaking as he answered, "I got lost a long time ago, sir. I don't really remember." He paused, eyes welling up. I encouraged him softly. "It's okay, son. Tell me." He took a deep breath. "I used to live in a really big house. My dad always wore suits. Then one day I woke up under a bridge with no one around. After that, I just wandered." His story chilled me. I imagined a child waking up alone in a strange place, terrified. "Do you remember your parents' names? Anything at all?" He shook his head. "I only remember Dad was called Clayton, I think." The next day I took him to child services. I reported everything. They checked records, questioned Mason, but he had no documents or clear details. No matching missing child reports turned up. They allowed me to keep him temporarily as his de facto guardian. "You can care for him for now, but you'll need to file regular reports," the officer said. I nodded, relieved yet anxious. What began as pity turned into deep attachment. Mason started calling me Uncle Owen, and I treated him like my own son. He lived with us. Having Mason made life harder but infinitely warmer. For the first time, our little rental echoed with a child's laughter, Mason running around telling me about school, drawing pictures to give me. I worked to support us and cared for him myself, waking early to make breakfast, biking him to school on my old bicycle, cooking dinner, tucking him in at night. "Uncle Owen, I got an A in math today," he'd shout, and I'd hug him, proud as any father. Amy reluctantly accepted it at first. Fine, keep him for now. But resentment simmered inside her. She often complained, "Owen, the place is cramped, money is tight, and now another mouth to feed. Why not take him to an orphanage?" I explained, "Amy, he has no one. I can't do that to him." She just shook her head, her eyes growing colder. Then disaster struck like a storm. The company I worked for teetered on bankruptcy, recession, orders dried up, mass layoffs to cut costs. I was on the list. The notice came without warning. "Owen, sorry, but we have to let you go." My stomach dropped. Panic about the future overwhelmed me. In the early days of unemployment, Amy was still supportive, hugging me. "You'll get through this. It's just temporary. You'll find something and we'll be fine again." I believed her and threw myself into job hunting, online applications, phone calls, even walking door to door for interviews. Every reply was the same. "Sorry, we're not hiring." The job market had frozen solid and despair crept in. As savings dwindled, I took any manual labor I could find just to keep food on the table. Unloading trucks at the market, warehouse work, cleaning construction sites, anything that paid. My back ached constantly, hands blistered, but I gritted my teeth. "Are you tired today, Uncle?" Mason would ask, rubbing my back. I'd smile. "Not at all, I'm strong as an elephant." But inside, the pressure built. While I struggled to carry us, Amy changed day by day. She grew distant, quiet, came home late with excuses about overtime. Her phone was always hidden, password changed, initial encouragement turned to irritation. "Owen, you're a failure." Then to outright blame. "You can't provide for this family anymore." I'm exhausted. I felt the gulf between us widen, yet I endured, hoping it would pass. Until one afternoon, the truth hit me unprepared. I came home earlier than usual. The moment I stepped inside, I saw Amy on the couch, head down, giggling at her phone in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in ages. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I walked closer. Just then, her screen lit up with a new message. Instinctively, I snatched the phone before she could react. The name on the screen, Jorge Hale, a 41-year-old high-ranking manager. The text was ice cold. "Baby, same time tonight?" My heart felt crushed. I turned to her, voice shaking with rage and pain. "Amy, what exactly is going on between you and this man?" She froze for a second, then scowled. "What are you doing? How dare you grab my phone?" I shoved the screen in her face, chest heaving. "Then what do these messages mean?" She stared at it, silent for several heavy breaths, then exhaled sharply and looked at me with cold eyes. "Fine. Yes, I've been seeing Jorge for a while." I stood rooted to the spot, throat tight. "How could you betray our marriage so easily?" Amy gave a bitter laugh, every word sharp as a blade. "Because you're a loser. You can't provide the life I want anymore. I'm tired of living in poverty and despair." The betrayal left me reeling. The last of my trust collapsed. The argument exploded. We screamed in each other's faces, years of pent-up resentment unleashing like a storm. "How could you do this to me? We're married," I shouted, tears streaming. Amy sneered, voice dripping with contempt. "Because you're useless, jobless, broke, and you even picked up some nameless kid as extra baggage. You can't even take care of yourself, yet you try to save someone else." Her insult toward Mason broke me completely. My heart felt torn apart. That same night, Amy calmly demanded divorce. "I've thought about it. Let's end this here." She left immediately, taking all our savings and most of our possessions, furniture, jewelry. I was left with only Mason, an empty rented room, and a mountain of unpaid bills. When I could no longer pay rent, the landlord terminated the lease without mercy. "You're 3 months behind. Get out." We were thrown onto the street. In a terrifyingly short time, I lost my job, my wife, my possessions, and my home. With no other options, I pinned my last shred of hope on my own parents, believing that blood at least would not abandon me. But what happened tonight at their door in the pouring rain crushed even that fragile hope. The rain still fell, dragging me back to the present. I realized the peaceful past was sealed forever. My present was not just utter destitution, but the responsibility for a child I had taken as my own 2 years ago. How was I going to protect him? That question made my heart pound with dread for the dark future ahead. In the days that followed, I was nearly drained dry in my desperate search for work. I roamed markets, construction sites, and knocked on the doors of every small factory, clinging to the faintest hope of earning enough to keep the two of us alive. But all I got were sporadic manual labor jobs, hauling heavy crates at the market, cleaning filthy rat-infested warehouses, mixing cement under a sun that burned like fire. Mason trailed behind me from morning till night. Every evening my back ached unbearably, my hands blistered and raw from lifting, yet I could only grit my teeth and endure. The pitiful wages barely covered a couple of cheap meals and one restless night in a rundown motel. Many contractors exploited my situation, a jobless man with a child in tow. They promised full pay when the job's done, then doled out a few coins or simply refused to pay at all. Once, after 3 days of unloading tons of cement, the foreman smirked. "You work too slow. I'm docking everything. Get lost." Rage shook me. I wanted to lunge at him, but thinking of Mason waiting outside, I bowed my head and walked away. My heart pounded with humiliation and dread that tomorrow we might have nothing to eat. "Uncle Owen, why are you sad?" Mason asked, hugging me. I wiped my tears. "It's nothing, buddy. We'll be okay." Then the accident happened. While overworked at a construction site, I was carrying a heavy steel beam when my foot slipped on rain-slick mud. I fell hard. The beam crashed onto my leg. Pain seared through me as I screamed. Blood poured from a deep gash. Co-workers pulled me free, but with no insurance, I had to wrap it myself with torn cloth. A doctor at the free clinic said, "Rest at least a week. No walking." I lay in our temporary shelter, legs swollen and throbbing, no income. Mason sat beside me, wiping my sweat. "I'll take care of you." He forced a smile, but his eyes were red. Panic consumed me. Money gone, food running out. How would we survive? Driven to the edge, I had no choice but to drag Mason to the homeless food distribution site, a cluster of tents on the outskirts where the unfortunate queued in rain or sun. The first time I brought him, shame crushed my chest. "Uncle Owen, where are we?" he asked, clutching my hand. "A place where kind people give free food, buddy. We'll take some and go home." We lined up and received bowls of thin soup and stale bread. I always gave Mason the fuller portion. He needed nutrition to grow, while I ate leftovers or just the watery broth. "Uncle, you eat." "I'm full," he'd say, pushing food toward me. I shook my head. "Finish yours, I'm not hungry." But my stomach growled painfully. Hunger made me dizzy. Despite the hardship, Mason remained obedient and mature beyond his years. It broke my heart. He never complained, always clung to me as his only lifeline. By day, he studied from old books I'd scavenged. At night, he curled against me for warmth. I hunted for work while making sure Mason had every meal and safe sleep, buying medicine when he coughed, telling stories to distract him from hunger. I tried to shield him from as much pain as possible, hiding my fears behind smiles. But late at night, I lay awake, heart racing with terror. Would we starve? Would someone take him away? One day at the charity site, the crowd was larger than usual, probably because of the rain. Mason and I queued as always, clutching our bowls of hot soup. Suddenly, a convoy of luxury cars pulled up. A wealthy man stepped out with bodyguards, gleaming suit, glittering watch. He had come for a charity event, handing out gifts and food. The crowd buzzed. "That's Clayton Scott, the tycoon." I paid him no attention, focused only on getting our meal. Then, out of nowhere, Mason froze. His eyes widened. He trembled and pointed. "Uncle Owen, that's my dad." His whisper was filled with shock and fear. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Shh, Mason, you're mistaken." "Quiet." I quickly hushed him, terrified he'd draw attention and get us thrown out. But his panicked stare had already caught the rich man's eye. Clayton Scott's gaze locked onto the boy's face. His own face went white as if he'd seen a ghost. In an instant, he shoved through the crowd, yanked Mason from my grasp, and pulled him into a frantic embrace. "My son, is it really you? Am I dreaming?" he shouted, voice breaking. I stood stunned, my hand suddenly empty. "Hey, what are you doing to the kid?" I yelled. But Clayton barked at his bodyguards. "Restrain that man!" The guards rushed forward and pinned me down on the spot, their grip crushing my shoulders. I struggled in panic. "Let me go! Don't touch him!" Meanwhile, Mason, terrified, screamed and cried. "Dad, don't hurt Uncle Owen. He's good to me." The crowd erupted in chaos, shouting, shoving, soup bowls spilling everywhere. I was forced to my knees, heart thundering, utterly bewildered. "I've been taking care of him," I shouted, but my voice was lost in the uproar. Clayton, overwhelmed with emotion, examined Mason frantically, touching his face, hugging him tightly, firing questions. "Are you hurt? What did they do to you?" This only frightened the boy more. He sobbed louder, desperately looking back for me. "Uncle Owen, where's my Uncle Owen?" That reaction convinced Clayton I was a kidnapper. Rage exploded across his face, eyes bloodshot. You kidnapped and held my son. I'll kill you." He pointed straight at me, accusing loudly. The crowd murmured, phones raised, filming, "Child abductor." Only then did I realize this was a horrific misunderstanding. My heart raced, cold sweat pouring. No. I took him in and raised him for 2 years. He was homeless. I found him unconscious at my door. I tried desperately to explain about that rainy night taking him to child services, but in the frenzy my words sounded like lies. Clayton screamed, "Shut up. Hold him. Call the police." The bodyguards tightened their grip until I could barely breathe. I struggled in agony to make them listen. I was not a kidnapper. But Clayton, clutching the boy, turned and walked away. Phones kept recording, whispers spreading, "Child abductor right here." I knelt there, heart pounding with terror that I might lose Mason forever. Would the police believe me? Was this the end? The police arrived quickly, sirens blaring through the chaotic charity area. They pushed through the crowd, shoved people aside, and handcuffed me without much explanation. "You are being detained on suspicion of child abduction," a tall officer said coldly. I tried to protest. "No, I've been raising him. Please listen to me." But they ignored me and bundled me into the patrol car along with Clayton and Mason. The boy was sobbing hysterically, twisting around to look at me. "Uncle Owen, don't take him away." Clayton held him tightly, comforting him. "It's okay, son. Daddy's here now." The car sped toward the station. My heart pounded wildly, my mind spinning with the worst possibilities. Would they beat me? Would they force Mason to say bad things about me? The handcuffs made my hands shake uncontrollably. At the station, the air was stifling, stale coffee and damp paperwork. They separated us. I was taken to an interrogation room, Clayton and Mason to another. A middle-aged officer with a stern face and thick mustache sat across from me. "Start talking. Who are you? Why was the boy with you?" I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm even though my heart was racing. I told the whole story from the beginning, voice trembling but as clear as I could make it. 2 years ago, I came home late and found Mason unconscious from hunger and cold right outside my door. He was soaked, emaciated. I carried him inside, cared for him until he woke up. At first, he only stayed temporarily, but he kept coming back because he had nowhere else to go. I asked about his family. He said he was lost, didn't remember clearly, only that he used to live in a big, wealthy house and woke up one day under a bridge. I took him to child services. They checked, found no matching records, and allowed me to be his temporary guardian. Since then, I've raised him as my own son. Took him to school, fed him, put him to bed. I have never kidnapped anyone. The officer took notes, eyes still suspicious. "Do you have proof? Documents, witnesses?" I nodded. "Yes, papers from child services, neighbors who saw me caring for him, people at the charity site." They began verifying immediately, calling the charity network, social services, anyone who had ever dealt with us. I sat there, heart pounding, sweat soaking my shirt. Every minute felt like hours. I imagined being thrown in jail forever, losing Mason forever. Will they believe me? I kept thinking, fists clenched. The results came back after 2 agonizing hours. The officer returned, his expression softer. "Everything you said checks out. Child Services confirms you are the registered temporary guardian. There are no signs of abduction or illegal detention. Neighbors and charity workers all describe you taking excellent care of the boy. They also noted Mason's behavior. He showed no fear of me. Quite the opposite, he was clearly attached and dependent. In the other room, he had been crying, 'I want Uncle Owen. He's my dad,' the officer told Clayton. The boy sees this man as his father. It was a terrible misunderstanding. After finishing the paperwork, signatures, photos, statements, they declared it a serious misunderstanding and released all 3 of us. I stepped outside on shaky legs, the cool afternoon air finally letting me breathe. In front of the station, Clayton Scott stood waiting, his earlier fury replaced by deep embarrassment. He explained how Mason had disappeared years ago, then lowered his voice. Owen, I'm sorry. I lost control. I thought you were a kidnapper, and in my panic, I insulted you, hurt you, called the police. I'm truly sorry for putting you through this. I looked at him, heart still racing from the ordeal. I understood. A father who had lost his child for over 2 years, the pain and desperation exploding the moment he saw him. I held no grudge. It's all right, Mr. Scott. I understand. If it were me, I might have done the same. The important thing is that Mason is safe. After the apology, Clayton hesitated, reached into his wallet, and pulled out a bank card. Here, $10,000. A small token of gratitude for saving and raising my son all this time. You kept him alive when I couldn't. I froze for a moment, staring at the card. Money, the very thing I needed most right now, for food, for shelter. But I shook my head and gently pushed it back. No, Mr. Scott. Caring for Mason was never a transaction or a duty to be paid for. For the past 2 years, he has been my real son, not something that can be measured or repaid with money. I did it out of love, not for reward. Clayton stopped, his face a mix of shame and profound respect. He quietly put the card away and looked at me with genuine admiration. You're a good man, Owen. Thank you. When Clayton prepared to take Mason away, I stood frozen for several seconds, throat tight, barely able to think straight. My heart felt as if it were being torn apart. I forced myself to stay calm only so I wouldn't scare Mason more. I knew that going back to his real wealthy father, good schools, proper meals, a life without want, was the best future for him. But it hurt so much. I knelt down, hugged him, and whispered through tears, Mason, buddy, listen to me. Go with your dad. He loves you very much. I'll miss you. Tears rolled down my face as I fought to hold back the pain ripping through my chest. Mason clung to me, sobbing uncontrollably, refusing to let go, eyes wild with terror at being torn from the only world he had known. No, I'm not going. I want to stay with Uncle Owen. You're my dad. He screamed, gripping my shirt, face soaked with tears. Clayton gently pried him away, holding and comforting him. It's okay, son. Daddy's here. We're going home. But Mason kept struggling, reaching for me. Uncle Owen, don't leave me. I stood motionless as father and son walked to the car in the station parking lot, my thin frame rigid as stone. Clayton's luxury car started. Mason pressed his face to the rear window, crying as he looked back at me. When the car disappeared around the corner, I remained rooted to the spot, drained of strength, mind blank, overwhelmed by a sudden, crushing sense of loss. Tears fell without stopping. My chest hurt so much I could barely breathe. Mason, the child I loved, was gone. I turned and wandered back toward our temporary shelter, heart pounding with dread at the lonely life ahead. Would I ever see him again, or was this truly the end? After the day Mason left, my life fell into a vast, suffocating void. Everyday routines became meaningless and unbearably heavy, as if I were dragging around a soulless body. In the mornings, I no longer woke to the sound of a child's laughter. There was no warm milk to prepare, no simple breakfast to make. The makeshift shelter under the bridge now felt cavernously empty. Yet I was suffocating from longing. I ate only enough to survive. Food had lost all taste. At night, I lay awake staring at the dark concrete ceiling, picturing Mason's face. His wide grin when I told him stories, the way he clung to me when he was scared. Uncle Owen, I had a nightmare, he used to whisper, and I would soothe him until he fell back asleep. Now my own sleep was filled with nightmares. The boy being dragged away, calling my name in vain. I'd jolt awake in the middle of the night, heart pounding, cold sweat pouring, terrified that somewhere he was crying and I couldn't reach him. Every morning, out of habit I couldn't break, I still walked to the charity site, my feet moving mechanically despite the faintness of hope. I queued for free food, eyes scanning the crowd, desperately wishing to see Mason just once more. Maybe he had snuck away to visit, or Clayton had brought him. Today might be the day, I told myself, heart racing whenever I spotted a small figure in the distance. But it was always another child, and disappointment crashed over me like a wave. Day after day passed in weary waiting, yet Mason never appeared, and the hope inside me slowly died with each fading afternoon. The weak sunlight filtered through sparse trees, stretching my shadow long across the ground, as if stretching out the pain itself. I sat alone with my bowl of thin soup, tears rolling down unnoticed. Where is he now? What is he eating? Is he sleeping well? Those questions kept my heart pounding with worry. I could neither eat nor sleep properly. Gradually, I began to accept the truth. Mason's life had taken a different path. A big house, a wealthy biological father, good schools. He deserved that, not wandering with a broken, unemployed man like me. I forced myself to push the past aside and stand up again. You can't live forever in memories, I scolded myself, wiping my tears and rising. I kept job hunting, electrician, warehouse worker, even dishwashing. I found sporadic temporary jobs, saved every penny, and finally rented a tiny room instead of sleeping under the bridge. Life was still hard, but at least I had a goal: survive, and perhaps one day forget the pain. But how could I forget? Every night I still dreamed of Mason, waking with a racing heart and trembling hands, as if he were calling me from afar. One day, as usual, I went to the charity site for a free meal. The sun blazed overhead. The crowd was larger and noisier than normal. I took my soup and sat in my usual corner, staring blankly around. Then from a distance I spotted a small, familiar figure in the middle of the yard. Messy hair, shy smile. My heart seized. I rubbed my eyes, convinced it was another hallucination from missing him too much. Another mirage, I whispered, trying to turn away to spare myself the pain. But then that familiar voice rang out, small yet clear above the noise. Uncle Owen! Uncle Owen! All the emotions I had bottled up exploded inside me. My heart pounded wildly, tears burst forth, and I ran forward, pulling the boy into a fierce embrace, unable to hide my overwhelming joy. Mason. Buddy. Is it really you? I shouted, voice shaking, holding him tight against my chest, feeling the familiar warmth. Mason cried and babbled all at once. Uncle Owen, are you okay? I missed you so much. He clung to me, soaking my shirt with tears. We stood there in the middle of the yard, hugging and sobbing, while the crowd watched in surprise but left us alone. Joy mixed with nervous excitement. Was this a dream? Would he be taken away again? When the emotions finally settled, I instinctively looked around in panic, afraid someone would suddenly snatch him. My heart raced as I scanned for bodyguards, luxury cars, or strangers. Then Clayton Scott approached from behind, impeccably dressed, his expression much softer than before. He smiled. Don't worry. I brought him to see you. Shall we talk? Clayton invited me to a small nearby cafe for a private conversation. We sat in a quiet corner, Mason between us, gripping my hand tightly. I ordered black coffee, my hands still trembling with emotion. Clayton began gently. Since bringing Mason home, his physical health has improved a lot. I took him to doctors for full checkups and made sure he eats properly. He's back in a good school now and has friends. He paused, looking at Mason fondly. I nodded, warmth spreading through my chest. That's good. He deserves it. But Clayton sighed. However, emotionally, he's been very quiet and withdrawn. He often sits alone, staring out the window, hardly smiling. I asked him many times what was wrong, but he wouldn't say. Then one day he suddenly mentioned you. I miss Uncle Owen, Dad. He's the best person ever. He cried all night, begging to see you again. His words made my heart pound and tears well up once more. Clayton continued. That's when I truly understood how important you are to my son. He sees you as a second father. So I agreed to bring him to meet you today. He went on to say he had investigated my background, my past as an electrician, my skills and everything I had been through, losing my job, my wife being turned away by my own parents. I hired people to look into you. You've been through hell, yet you never lost your kindness. I admire you." After some more talk, Clayton offered me a job at his company, a maintenance electrician position perfectly suited to my expertise. "My company is large and needs someone like you. Stable salary, full benefits. What do you say?" The offer stunned me beyond belief. My heart raced, hands shaking. You're serious? After everything I've lost? I can't believe I'm being given a real chance like this." Tears rolled down my face uncontrollably. Mason clung to my hand, eyes shining with hope. "I want to be close to you." I pulled him into my arms, gratitude flooding me, a feeling I had almost forgotten after so many years. "Thank you, Clayton. I will cherish this opportunity with everything I have." We sat a while longer talking about Mason. He told me about his new school but said he still preferred the old bicycle I used to push him on. Clayton nodded. "From now on, you can see him anytime. We're family." His words warmed my heart, yet left me nervously excited. Was this real? Would the new job go smoothly? Leaving the cafe, I walked them to the car. Mason hugged me tightly. "See you tomorrow, okay?" I nodded, tears falling. "Of course, buddy." The car drove off, but this time there was no pain, only a glimmer of hope. That night in my newly rented room, my heart still pounded with anticipation of tomorrow, a new job, seeing Mason again. After so much loss, my life finally seemed to be brightening. The next day, I woke earlier than usual, my heart still racing with nervous excitement. I put on the cleanest clothes I had, an old shirt carefully ironed, and walked to Clayton Scott's company. It was a massive building on the city outskirts with sprawling production halls filled with the loud hum of modern machinery. I stood at the gate, swallowed hard, and told myself, "You can do this, Owen. This is your second chance." The HR staff greeted me and led me to Clayton's office. He shook my hand warmly. "Welcome to the family. You'll be working as an electrical maintenance technician in the production plant. You start today." I nodded, voice slightly trembling. "Thank you, sir. I'll give it everything I have." The first few days I worked with extreme caution, as if walking a tightrope. Everything was new. Complex production lines, advanced electrical systems with automated sensors, tight deadlines that forced me to race against the clock. I had to relearn almost everything, poring over thick manuals, watching colleagues, asking detailed questions. I made small mistakes from being unfamiliar with the modern equipment, miswiring a circuit and halting a machine for half an hour, or forgetting to check a sensor and triggering a false alarm. The shift supervisor kept correcting me. "Owen, be more careful. One delay affects the whole line." My heart would pound every time, terrified I'd be fired. But I never complained or argued. Instead, I stayed late to double-check my work and study. Sitting alone in the darkened plant, reading by flashlight, practicing on small models. "You have to try harder, Owen," I told myself, sweat dripping even in the cold night. Those nights I returned to my room exhausted, but I could feel myself improving, from stumbling to gaining confidence. My diligence, eagerness to learn, and solid foundational skills paid off quickly. Within just 2 weeks, I was handling difficult tasks. Emergency electrical repairs, optimizing circuits to save energy. The supervisors and lead engineers noticed, "Owen, you're doing great. You've progressed faster than I expected." Those words warmed my heart and made me excited for a stable future. My first steady income in years, monthly wages enough to cover rent and decent food, finally let me rent a clean room and end the nights under bridges or on sidewalks. Life was still hard. I saved every penny, ate simply, but at least I had a roof and a job. As for Mason, after school or on early dismissal days, a driver would bring him to the factory. The sound of a car pulling up, then the boy running into the plant shouting, "Uncle Owen, I'm here!" Every time I saw him racing toward me across the factory yard, joy flooded me, heart racing, smile breaking across my face. In my free moments, I helped him with homework, sitting at an old wooden table in the break room working on math or reading together. "What's this, Uncle?" he'd ask, pointing at an electrical diagram. I'd laugh. "It's a circuit, like blood flowing through the body." Then I'd take him to the employee cafeteria for sandwiches and warm milk. He'd eat happily and tell me about school. Clayton often watched us from a distance, smiling. He gradually began treating me like family, not just an employee. "Owen, you're like a big brother to him," he once said over coffee. Mason's presence in my new life gave me, for the first time since everything fell apart, the feeling of having a real family again. But just when things were finally settling, disaster struck like lightning. The company appointed a new shop floor manager. In a sudden meeting, the director introduced him. "This is Jorge Hale, transferred from another branch." My heart stopped when I saw him. Jorge, Amy's lover, the arrogant, scheming 41-year-old. Rumors spread quickly. He had been demoted and transferred here after a major screw-up, losing a multi-million-dollar contract due to fraud. His face still carried that smug look, but his eyes burned with resentment. The moment we were introduced, Jorge recognized me instantly. His gaze flickered with shock, then turned icy and contemptuous, like he was looking at an insect. "Owen Moore? Well, small world," he sneered. From that day on, trouble rained down on me at work. Jorge deliberately assigned me the heaviest, longest shifts, constant night duty, non-stop emergency repairs. "Owen, you're on this shift." "No whining," he'd bark, glaring. The tiniest mistakes were blown out of proportion. Forgetting to log something became a serious safety violation and earned salary deductions. Difficult jobs were dumped on me with impossible deadlines and no help. Rewiring an entire system overnight, alone. Reasonable technical suggestions were shot down without explanation. "Stupid idea, do it my way." Bonuses and performance reviews were delayed or slashed for no reason. I knew I was being targeted. My heart raced every morning, walking into the plant terrified today would be the day I got fired. But I stayed silent. I told no one, not Clayton, not anyone. I didn't want to drag up the painful past with my ex-wife and the humiliation of being betrayed and discarded. "You can handle this, Owen," I told myself, gritting my teeth and working harder. The pressure left me exhausted. I'd collapse on my bed, aching all over. But I clung to the job. It was the only thing keeping me afloat, and I needed stability for Mason. The breaking point came one afternoon after a long shift. As I walked out the factory gate, drained and weary, I suddenly saw Amy and Jorge waiting by the roadside, relaxed, as if they had timed my exit perfectly. Amy in an elegant dress, Jorge leaning against his expensive car. The moment Amy spotted me, contempt twisted her face. She smirked. "Oh, Owen, look at you, still pathetic, working as a lowly technician here? Crawled up a little from rock bottom, have we?" Her voice dripped with venom disguised as sweetness. Jorge just sneered, eyes full of arrogant menace. "Yeah, loser. You're lucky to even have this job. Don't expect it to last." My heart pounded wildly, hands trembling with shock and fear. Why were they here? A few co-workers and staff stopped to watch. Whispers spread. "Who's that woman? Owen's ex-wife?" I stood exposed under their stares and insults, stripped bare in public, face burning with humiliation. Amy kept going. "Remember, Owen, you lost your job, lost everything. I left because you were useless. And now, still scraping by. Jorge is the real man." I wanted to scream, to punch Jorge, but I held it in. Not wanting to make a bigger scene, I lowered my head and walked away in silence, shame choking me. My steps were heavy, tears streaming. Back in my room, I collapsed on the bed, heart still racing with rage and fear. Would he get me fired? Would the past destroy my present again? In the days that followed, I tried to stay calm. But every morning I woke with the weight of that humiliating encounter still pressing on my chest like a boulder. I went to work on edge, avoiding even a glance toward Jorge's office, dreading running into him. The pressure from his harassment continued, longer shifts, tougher assignments, and sly insults. "Hurry up, you useless piece of trash." Yet after weeks of relentless targeting, I gradually learned to face it with composure and handle every situation more carefully. I no longer reacted emotionally to his provocations, no shouting back, no arguing. I simply completed my tasks by the book, documenting every step meticulously so he had no excuse to fault me. "Here's a job. 2-day deadline," he'd bark, throwing files in my face. "Yes, sir. I'll finish on time," I'd reply calmly. Inside, my heart pounded with rage, but I held it in and focused on proving myself through my work. Colleagues began to notice. During breaks, they whispered, "Jorge's clearly out to get Owen." Many already disliked Jorge for his authoritarian, abrasive style. He yelled for no reason, cut bonuses arbitrarily, so they quietly started helping me. A shift leader slipped me documents. "Here, the new system diagram. Study it first." A coworker checked my work. "Owen, that wire's wrong. Fix it before he sees." I thanked them, my heart warmed yet still anxious. Afraid Jorge would find out, but grateful I was no longer alone. Thanks to their discreet support, my work gradually stabilized again. The pressure remained. Night shifts left me exhausted. Bonuses were still docked, but I was no longer being crushed. I got home earlier, had time to rest, and even began studying online to improve my skills. Looking in the mirror, I urged myself to keep going. One ordinary day after school, Mason was dropped off at the factory to wait for his dad. I was checking an electrical panel in a corner of the shop, bent over tangled wires, sweating under fluorescent lights, when I heard the familiar patter of his footsteps. "Uncle Owen, what are you doing?" he shouted happily, voice echoing over the machinery noise. I looked up, smiling wide. "Hey, buddy, early dismissal today? I'm almost done, just wait over there a minute." Mason obediently sat on a bench, grinning and chattering, making me forget all my fatigue. At that exact moment, Jorge came down from the hallway to check progress, his heavy footsteps and shouting audible from afar. "Why is everything so slow?" He saw me with Mason in the production area and his face instantly darkened. Jorge exploded, storming over and yelling at me for bringing a child into the factory, using workplace safety as an excuse to pick a fight. "Are you insane, Owen? Who allowed a kid in here? This place is deadly. Safety violation. I'm docking your pay. Get him out now." His voice was shrill, face red, finger jabbing in my face. My heart raced with worry for Mason, but I stayed calm. "Sorry, boss. He's just visiting. I'll take him out right away." Before I could move, Mason heard the shouting and turned, terrified. He froze, eyes wide with horror. The instant Jorge's gaze landed on Mason's face, he too stopped dead. His scowl turned to shock, then his face went ashen as if he'd seen a ghost. His stare lingered on Mason far too long, revealing unmistakable panic and confusion, mouth slightly open, hands trembling slightly, as though struck by lightning. After a few heavy seconds, Jorge abruptly turned and hurried away without another word, footsteps frantic like he was fleeing. The shop fell silent for a moment. Everyone exchanged puzzled glances. Behind me, Mason had also gone rigid, face pale, small hands shaking as he clutched my sleeve. The earlier joy was gone. His eyes were haunted, as if he had just seen something terrifying. Lips pressed tight, body trembling. I knelt down, voice full of concern. "Mason, what's wrong? Do you know that man? Why are you so scared?" He just shook his head frantically, eyes brimming with tears, unable to speak. It's nothing, Uncle," he whispered, voice shaking. His unnatural silence told me clearly he was hiding a deep fear, as if some horrific memory had just resurfaced. My heart pounded with dread. What was going on? Why had both of them reacted like that? From that day on, Mason came to the factory much less often. He made excuses, too much homework, feeling tired. But whenever we met, through Clayton's calls or on weekends, he became guarded, jumping at loud noises. "Uncle Owen, I'm scared of shouting," he whispered once, avoiding my eyes. As for Jorge, he now obviously avoided me. No direct assignments, only emails, eyes darting away whenever we passed in the hall. That drastic change only deepened my suspicion about some connection between him and Mason. My heart raced every time I thought about it. Was Jorge involved in the boy's disappearance? Was there a dark secret? I knew I could no longer stay silent. If something was wrong, Mason could be in danger. After many sleepless nights weighing the risks, I decided to tell Clayton Scott everything. I requested a private meeting in his office, heart pounding as I entered. "Mr. Clayton, I need to talk about Mason and Jorge." Clayton listened, his face growing grave. When I described both Jorge's and Mason's panicked reactions, the stares, the trembling, the avoidance, he sat silent for a long time, gripping his coffee cup tightly. Finally, he spoke, voice low. "I'll have someone quietly investigate Jorge. Thank you for telling me this." He also asked me to keep spending time with Mason, talking gently and reassuring him so the boy might open up when ready. "You're the person he trusts most. Help him feel safe enough to speak." I nodded and left, carrying a heavier unease than ever before, as if a storm was gathering and I was standing right at its center. In the days that followed, I began spending much more time with Mason, with Clayton's special permission. He trusted me so completely that he essentially handed the boy over to me, allowing me to take him out after school to eat, play, anywhere, like a second father. "Take him wherever you want as long as it's safe," Clayton said over the phone, his voice full of confidence. Every time he called, my heart raced, afraid there might be bad news about the Jorge investigation. But I was also deeply grateful for the chance. During our outings, Mason slowly emerged from his fearful, withdrawn state. At first, he barely spoke, clinging tightly to my hand, eyes darting around as if someone might be watching. But gradually, under the warm park sun or beside the shimmering lake, he began to laugh more, talk more. "Uncle Owen, look at that fish. It's huge," he shouted while we fed the ducks. I laughed, heart-warming. "You're right. It'd be delicious grilled." We ate vanilla ice cream, his favorite, sitting on a bench telling silly stories. "Remember when we used to eat dry bread? This is way better." He giggled, slowly regaining the innocence he'd always had with me. Those moments made my heart race with joy at seeing him improve, yet also with worry. He was still hiding a secret. I waited patiently, never pushing about the past, only trying to make him feel safe. I told fairy tales, played tag, bought animal-shaped balloons, anything to help him forget his fear. "I'm right here, buddy. No one will hurt you," I whispered when he flinched at a loud truck. Little by little, he opened up, talking about school, friends, even Clayton's big house. "I'm scared to sleep alone in that huge bed." His words choked me up, but I smiled. "Now you have everything. You're much better off." When the time felt right, after a few weeks of more laughter and fewer startled jumps, during a quiet walk by the river with the cool breeze blowing, I gently brought up Jorge. "Mason, that day at the factory, when you saw Mr. Jorge, why were you so scared? Do you know him?" I asked softly, squeezing his hand for reassurance. The moment I mentioned the man, Mason went pale, his whole body stiffening instinctively, his grip tightened painfully, eyes wide with terror, as if a dark memory had flooded back. "No, I don't want to talk about him," he whispered, voice trembling, body shaking. My heart pounded. I feared I had reopened a deep wound. I immediately knelt and hugged him. "Don't be afraid, son. I'll always protect you. No one will hurt you again. Tell me, I promise I'll keep it secret." I stroked his back, speaking gently, waiting for him to calm down. In fear and hesitation, Mason finally spoke the truth, voice barely a whisper. "Jorge. He's the one who kidnapped me. I remember the scar on his forehead. He locked me in a dark car. I was so scared." He burst into sobs, clinging to me. I froze in absolute shock. This man who had been tormenting me was the very monster from 2 years ago? My heart stopped for a beat, mind reeling. "Mason, are you sure? You remember clearly?" I pressed gently, voice shaking, stroking his hair. He nodded with unmistakable terror. "I'm sure, Uncle. The crescent-shaped scar, the hoarse voice. I was so scared." His words sent ice through my veins. Every time Jorge had looked at me with contempt now made sense. He was afraid of being recognized. That same day, I immediately took Mason to Clayton and told him everything. We went to his mansion, lush gardens, grand house. I knocked with a pounding heart, holding the boy's hand tightly. "Mr. Clayton, I have something very important to tell you," I said gravely. When Mason, trembling, repeated the details, the scar, the voice being locked in the dark, Clayton's face went white with rage, fists clenched on the armrests, though he forced himself to stay calm. "Son, was it really him? Daddy will take care of it." He hugged Mason, eyes red, then turned to me. "Thank you for helping him open up." He showed me a secretly recorded audio file his investigators had just obtained, a hushed conversation between Jorge and Amy captured through surveillance. In it, Jorge sounded panicked. "Amy, listen. I have to disappear for a while. Don't ask why and don't tell anyone. If you still trust me, pack up and come with me as soon as possible. We'll fly to Europe or somewhere. I don't want to go to prison for the old stuff." Hearing that, I went numb. Every suspicion clicked into place. His avoidance, his panic, everything now had a reason. My heart raced, cold sweat breaking out. My God, he really is the kidnapper. Clayton explained that right around the time Mason disappeared over 2 years ago, Jorge had suddenly taken unexplained leave from the company for 3 weeks, exactly matching the timeline. He took sudden vacation. 3 weeks. Right when my son vanished. It all fits. Clayton believed Jorge's motive stemmed from an old grudge. Years earlier, Clayton had personally blocked his promotion, killed a major deal, and disciplined him severely for financial fraud. He hated me for ruining his career. The kidnapping wasn't for ransom. It was insane revenge aimed directly at me, stealing my son to make me suffer. His words chilled me. The depth of Jorge's malice was terrifying. I realized Jorge's frantic preparations to flee meant he was truly terrified of being exposed and was planning to escape. "He's getting ready to run," I whispered, heart pounding. Clayton nodded. "Exactly. A silent race against time has begun. Whoever is slower loses the last chance to expose the truth." Clayton stood and called his lawyer and investigators. "We have to move fast. He must not get away." I sat holding Mason, mind spinning with the drama, from a jobless technician to the center of a kidnapping case. My heart raced with fear for the boy as I whispered, "Don't be afraid, buddy. I'll protect you." But inside, the storm was closing in. The race had started, time was running out, and the truth was waiting to be revealed. With Mason's full statement, recorded by the lawyer, his voice trembling yet resolute, along with the secret audio file, Jorge's phone location history, and other evidence, Clayton submitted everything to the police to officially reopen the kidnapping case from 2 years ago. We went to the police station on a drizzly morning. My heart pounded as Clayton handed over the dossier to the officer in charge. "This is new evidence. My son's disappearance 2 years ago. The suspect is Jorge Hale, a manager at my company." The officer, a middle-aged man with a thick mustache, flipped through the files, eyes narrowing. "We'll take the case and quietly investigate Jorge by the book. Don't breathe a word. This could spook him into fleeing." We left the station. I hugged Mason tighter, heart racing as I thought about the waiting days ahead. Would the police move fast enough? Would Jorge suspect anything? A few days later, the first sign appeared. Jorge suddenly requested extended personal leave. His email to Clayton was curt. "I need a few weeks off for family reasons." Clayton called me to his office immediately, face grim. "This is a clear sign he's preparing to bolt. He knows the wind is shifting." My heart raced with fear. If he escaped, everything would collapse. Mason would live in fear forever. Clayton and I realized we had to act fast. He called his private investigator. "Tail him closely. Report any movement immediately." Clayton's people followed and quickly reported. Within hours, Jorge and Amy were heading to the airport. "They're buying tickets to Mexico," the investigator whispered over the phone. Clayton and I jumped into his car and sped after them, my heart drumming wildly. "Faster! We can't let him get away!" Clayton shouted at the driver, gripping the wheel. At the same time, he urgently informed the police of the exact location. "Jorge Hale is at the international airport. He may be fleeing. We're en route." The car tore down the highway. rain now pouring heavily, the windshield fogging from our anxious breathing. At the airport, the terminal buzzed with travelers dragging suitcases, flight announcements echoing overhead. Jorge and Amy were in line at the international check-in counter, he in a black jacket, eyes darting nervously, Amy beside him chatting obliviously. The moment Jorge turned to scan behind him, he spotted Clayton and me pushing through the crowd. His eyes locked on us, his face drained of color, mouth falling open, hands trembling. Almost simultaneously, plainclothes police closed in from multiple directions, moving swiftly to surround them. Realizing he was trapped, Jorge panicked, sweat pouring, eyes wild. He spun and tried to run, shoving passengers aside, suitcases clattering to the floor. But after only a few stumbling steps, officers tackled him to the ground. A large detective pinned him. "Jorge Hale, you're under arrest for suspected child abduction." He thrashed and screamed. "Let me go. I'm innocent." The crowd erupted in chaos, screams, phones raised, filming everything. Amy stood frozen, face ashen, mouth agape. What's happening? Why are they arresting him? She tried to approach, but police held her back. "Ma'am, stay where you are." As the arrest warrant was read aloud, "You are under arrest for kidnapping and unlawful imprisonment of a minor." Jorge fought desperately, still denying everything. "This is a setup. You've got the wrong guy. Let me go." He writhed, even bit an officer's hand, but it was useless. They cuffed him and dragged him to his feet. Only then did Amy realize the man she trusted was suspected of a serious crime. She collapsed in the middle of the terminal, sobbing uncontrollably, hands covering her face. "No, it can't be. Jorge, is what they're saying true?" Police pulled her up. "You'll need to come with us for questioning." Jorge and Amy were led away under the gaze of dozens, people whispering, pointing. "Child abduction. That's horrific." I stood at a distance watching silently, heart pounding. Finally he was caught, but Mason's pain remained. Clayton put a hand on my shoulder. "We did it, Owen." After his arrest, Jorge was detained for investigation. In the early interrogations, he stubbornly denied everything. "I don't know any kid. You're framing me." He smirked in the dim interrogation room, repeating his innocence. My heart raced as Clayton updated me. "He's tough, but the evidence will crush him." Yet when the evidence was presented one by one, phone location data matching the disappearance site, CCTV footage near the bridge where Mason was abandoned, witnesses who saw him driving suspiciously near Clayton's home, and Mason's positive identification, Jorge began to crumble. His face paled, sweat poured. That wasn't me. When the recording of him and Amy was played, his panicked voice admitting, "The kid recognized me," Jorge completely broke and confessed everything. "Yes, I did it because I hated Clayton. He destroyed my career." He wept, head bowed. The motive was confirmed as personal revenge. Years earlier, Clayton had disciplined him severely and blocked his advancement for fraud. "He wanted me to suffer the way he thought I had made him suffer, by taking my son and abandoning him to wander," Clayton said, voice shaking. Amy was questioned as a person of interest. She sobbed. "I had no idea. He just said we were going on vacation." She was released after it was determined she had no involvement in the kidnapping. The kidnapping trial drew massive media attention because it involved the son of a prominent businessman. Reporters crowded outside the courthouse, cameras flashing. I sat in the witness section, heart pounding, holding Mason's hand. "Buddy, today your fear ends." In court, all evidence was presented publicly. Mason's testimony, the recordings, CCTV, Jorge's history. Before the prosecutor's airtight arguments, the defendant kidnapped a child out of personal vendetta, causing severe trauma. Jorge bowed his head, admitted his guilt, and accepted the sentence. The gavel fell. Jorge Hale was sentenced to 25 years without parole for child abduction and attempting to evade justice. The courtroom erupted in applause. As the trial ended, Mason, Clayton, and I quietly left the courthouse. Mason squeezed my hand, no longer fearful. He smiled. "The bad man is gone, Uncle. We stepped into the sunlight. My heart felt lighter, yet still anxious about the future. Justice had come, but the wounds needed time to heal. We went for ice cream. Mason ran around laughing. "Today is the best day ever, Uncle." Clayton put a hand on my shoulder. "Thank you for helping my son through the hardest time." I nodded, tears falling. I didn't do anything grand. I just couldn't let him be alone. He's been my family for a long time, too. After the trial, my life began to change in ways I had never imagined. Clayton, with profound gratitude for the 2 years I had saved and protected Mason, promoted me to head of the technical department at the company. It wasn't an emotional decision. He had seen my ability and dedication through months of hard work. "Owen, your skills deserve this position," he said at the executive meeting, voice warm and steady. I stood there, heart pounding, unable to believe my ears. "Manager, are you sure?" "I'm just a technician." Clayton smiled. "You don't just fix machines. You fixed my son's life. That's why." My competence and commitment quickly earned the recognition of the board and my colleagues. They applauded, congratulated me, and their widespread support melted away my initial fear and nervousness. I began leading the team, assigning tasks and solving complex problems, feeling as if I were living in a dream. The stable income and new status steadily improved my life. Higher salary, performance bonuses. I no longer had to count every penny for a meal. Though the job was demanding, meetings, system checks, emergency repairs, I never failed to make time for Mason, as if it were an unbreakable habit. Every evening, if he called, "Uncle Owen, tell me a story," I'd drop my reports to talk on the phone. On weekends, I'd pick him up. We'd go down slides at the park, eat hamburgers at our favorite spot. "Are you busy, Uncle?" he'd ask, eyes worried. I'd smile. "I'd drop anything to play with you, buddy." Those moments warmed my heart, yet still made it race. I feared losing this closeness if life turned again. One day, while I was reviewing reports in the office, the doorbell rang. I opened it and my heart stopped for a beat when I saw Amy standing there. Face gaunt, makeup barely hiding the dark circles under her eyes. "Owen, how have you been?" she whispered, voice trembling. I froze as painful memories flooded back. The betrayal, the insults, the encounter at the factory gate. "Amy, what are you doing here?" I asked coldly, gripping the door tightly. She apologized for everything she had done, making excuses about the past. "Owen, I was wrong. I was blind. Jorge, he deceived me. I regret it so much. Please forgive me. Can we fix things? Start over?" Her words made my heart pound with anger and sorrow. Why come back now when I had finally found stability? But I firmly cut off all contact, declaring that marriage had ended long ago and could never be revived. "Amy, it's too late. You left me, humiliated me repeatedly, and now you want to come back? Stop dreaming." My voice was calm, but inside it hurt. Amy left in belated remorse. She cried, "Owen, I'm sorry." But I closed the door, turned away, tears rolling down my face. That moment made my heart race as I thought of the past. Would I forgive her? No. I had learned to let go. Later, with a steady income, I bought a small, cozy apartment. 2 bedrooms, a little kitchen, a balcony overlooking the street. For the first time after years of wandering, I truly had a home. Standing in the empty living room, my heart raced with joy and fear. Joy at finally having a place, fear of losing it if I failed. I decorated simply, photos of Mason on the wall, an old but comfortable sofa. Mason often came over, brought by Clayton, and I visited the mansion too. We had dinner together, told stories, watched movies. Our bond gradually became a real, lasting family. "Owen, you're like a brother to me," Clayton once said, clapping my shoulder. Mason called me Uncle Owen, but sometimes whispered Dad, making my heart pound with happiness. On sunny afternoons, we walked in the park, him holding both our hands. I have 2 dads now. My heart raced. This was true family, not by blood but by love. Later I heard my biological parents had fallen into hardship. Through an old acquaintance, I learned their company had gone bankrupt from bad investments, drowning in millions in debt. Their once grand house was seized by the bank. They sold everything and moved to a cramped, moldy rental on the outskirts. Loud neighbors, constant struggle. They fell ill, Dad with joint pain, Mom with high blood pressure, but had no money for treatment. The news made my heart race, not with pity, but with a storm of emotions. Anger at that rainy night they threw me out, yet sadness because they were still blood. One day the doorbell rang. I opened it to find my parents standing there, worn, in old clothes, eyes red. "Owen, son, can we talk?" Dad whispered, voice shaking. They spoke of their troubles, invoked blood ties, hoping I'd soften. "Son, we know we were wrong. We truly have no one left to turn to. We're family. Help us just this once," Mom cried. "We're family, Owen. Don't abandon us." I looked at them for a long time, heart pounding as memories returned. The insults, the door slamming in the rain. Then I took Mason's hand. He was visiting, clinging to me, and said he was my only real family now. "Mom, Dad, the only family I have is this boy. He stayed with me when I lost everything, when you threw me out into the storm. I flatly refused to help and asked them to leave. I can't help you. You turned me away. Now I live my own life." They wept and begged, but I closed the door, heart aching. From then on, they lived in poverty and illness. Dad hospitalized for his joints, Mom working as a cleaner. Word spread among relatives and neighbors about how they had cruelly cast me out that rainy night. They faced scorn and isolation. They deserve it, heartless to their own son. I let go of the painful past completely to live fully in the present. No hatred, only release. One afternoon in the park, I watched Mason running freely under the sun, his smile pure and unshadowed. He chased butterflies, laughing brightly. In that moment, I looked back on the entire journey, from the depths of despair to today. Unemployment, betrayal by my wife, abandonment by my parents, wandering with Mason, meeting Clayton, the Jorge case. My heart raced with emotion. How had I survived it all? I realized that even when betrayed and abandoned by my own blood, I never lost my kindness. And that very kindness led me to the true family of my life. Mason. I understood that those who stand by you at your lowest are your real family. Blood without humanity is just an empty name. And my advice to anyone who has been where I once was, karma always exists. Those who do evil will pay the price sooner or later, while those who live with kindness will, in the most unexpected way, find light and happiness again. When Mason ran back to me across the park, threw his arms around me and whispered a soft but complete "Dad," I knew that through all the storms I had endured, the greatest treasure I gained was not status or money, but a son with all my heart. Tears rolled down my face as I held him close. "I love you, son." My life at last had found peace.